Well, good evening. I'll be in total compliance with YouTube's terms of service. I'll be very careful not to use any cuss words. I usually don't anyway, but just in case. So if you detect any, they are probably between the lines. A defining moment in Iraq. This was an editorial which was published yesterday by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch on the web. So thanks St. Louis Post-Dispatch for making that information or the editorial available. You are fully credited here while I'm commenting on parts of this editorial. So it is completely within the fair use doctrine in terms of copyright that I should read some of these excerpts and then make some comments on my own, and then other people can comment on them too. As Iraqi security forces, and this is the Dispatch article here, as Iraqi security forces were foundering in their recent attempt to dislodge Shiite militias from the control of Basra, which, by the way, happens to be the second largest city in Iraq, consisting of millions of people, Mr. Bush called it a defining moment in the history of Iraq. This was the first paragraph in this editorial, by the way. Now, anyone who knows anything about the history of Iraq or of the Middle East, for that matter, would probably take some exception to that. But then again, you know, anything coming from Mr. Bush, Mr. Cheney, Mr. Wolfowitz, and so on, maybe they're not too familiar with it at this point. In any case, it defined just how inept, disjointed, and fractured the Iraqi army actually is. And this after almost 5 years and an interjection of $22 billion, our tax dollars, to train the Iraqi army to take control of their own country, which of course, and this of course is not mentioned by the St. Louis Dispatch, should have never invaded this country in the first place. That's hardly ever mentioned, actually, in our U.S. press. I hope you know people are intelligent enough to differentiate between what I'm reading here from the St. Louis Dispatch and my actual comments, because they might be taken out of context. The Prime Minister of Iraq, basically a U.S. installed puppet, and this is definitely not coming from the St. Louis Dispatch. They worded it quite differently. The freckless Prime Minister, as they called him, is still living in a fantasy world. It was Mr. Maliki's idea to send Iraqi troops into Basra, where the militia forces clobbered them. This was just a few weeks ago. Had it not been for the British and U.S. Army and Air Force intervention bombing that area, they probably would have not even had any mention in the news. And, you know, the power of al-Sadr, the cleric, the Shiite cleric in in Iraq should probably not be underestimated by the U.S. population here, because we understand very little about that region. And he has a great deal of appeal to the poor and to the Shiites in the entire region, which is why he unilaterally called a ceasefire after the surge, our U.S. surge into Iraq. And that is possibly why some of the casualties dropped for a very short period of time. Then, of course, they surged again, but that is not taken into account here in the U.S. news. So he calls a unilateral ceasefire, and then the Maliki government goes in and tries to, just annihilate 65% of the population in Basra, and that backfired. And so they had to withdraw, but Bush calls it a success still. So now Petraeus will go to the Senate. He'll do his usual spiel over there, saying that we have to, there has been some progress made and so on, and we are all fighting for a political solution. And I would just like to inform everyone that the current political solution of the Maliki government, which is installed by the United States over there, is to exclude the al-Sadr movement, and essentially what that amounts to is probably 60% of the Iraqi population from the political process altogether. He just announced that yesterday. So yeah, I guess Bush is calling that a success as well, and so does McCain. And in small parts also Hillary Clinton, because she doesn't want to withdraw from that country immediately. Only Obama has probably made even a mention of withdrawing significant amounts of troops from that country. But even he is ambivalent about it. So, that's the news for today in my own commentary. And so I hope, people like us will be able to speak out on YouTube and not have our videos pulled. These are, these are just opinions from people who actually read something outside of the internet. Some of us are more informed than others. And so I hope it would be allowed, because if it isn't allowed anymore, we'll probably find other venues to do what we're trying to do, and to inform people. Thanks for listening. Bye.